For joining us on a Tuesday. This is going to be part one of a two-part webinar series we're doing. We took our local trainings that we're doing this quarter and we broke it into today's presentation, which is going to be on the portfolio of Wi-Fi 6 products. And then coming up on Thursday, we'll do some design basics and characteristics along with how to choose the right access point. But to start with today, we wanted to really introduce the portfolio products that Snap One has that are Wi-Fi 6 related. And we have products in both the Arachnus Networks product line and the Access Networks product line. So today we're going to start off with, talking about what is Wi-Fi 6, why do we need it? There's some, very key characteristics that when you understand what they are, it makes sense why we need to be embracing it sooner than later, and why it's a benefit to our customers and the entire category as a whole. Then we'll go into the product lines from both Access Networks and Arachnus and go into the differences of the product lines and a little bit on how to select and how to choose between which access point for your project. And then we'll dive into OvrC and the benefits that it provides in both efficiency and profitability for both product lines, not just Arachnus. My name is Nathan Holmes. I've been in the industry for nearly 3 decades. I've had the benefit of starting from the bottom up, owned a couple of companies, worked for some great manufacturers. I'm one of the senior managers of education here at Snap One. I've been instructing for nearly 20 years, done a lot of work with CEDIA, and really love the channel and love the things that we do, and hope that I can pass on some tidbits of information for you guys and that you find this beneficial. When we start talking about Wi-Fi, there's some people who are familiar with terms like 802.11ax, and I'll ask the question, how many have heard of it? You get a couple hands that come up, and then I'll ask a group who's heard of Wi-Fi 6. A lot more of their hands go up, and you realize, okay, is there a difference between them? As I get asked all the time. And no, they aren't. They're 2 names for the same technology. The whole reason to have 2 names is the standards that are written by the IEEE are very based on, here's the standard. It's very, engineer focused, and it's 802.11 is the group of standards, and then the letters are the different working groups within there. Well, that's hard for customers to understand. What is better, 802.11a? AC, B, G, what's better? So the Wi-Fi Alliance created this generational naming scenario. Wi-Fi 6 is the 6th generation of Wi-Fi. Helps people understand that the newer generation has newer technologies, better performance, better characteristics. So makes it easier for people to understand is really what it comes down to. But if a product is 802.11ax, it's literally the same thing as Wi-Fi 6, just a different name. So to understand the product lines, first, I want to say both of them offer Wi-Fi 6 access points. We did it, we created them, but why does it matter? What is it, what benefits do I get as an integrator? What benefits does a homeowner get? And to do that, we have to understand Wi-Fi 6 has been a fundamental rewrite from the ground up of Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi was introduced in '97 and has had some intrinsic issues through the years that every rewrite they work on resolving more and more. And Wi-Fi 6 is also known as high efficiency Wi-Fi because they went back to the drawing board and from the ground up have changed a lot of things to make Wi-Fi much, much more robust and stable. I threw a bunch of them on this slide here to show that these are just a few of the ones, but they're probably the more important ones that we're going to cover. And I'll go into each one of them individually. But it is important to understand it's not just a name. There are a lot of things that come with it, and let's dive into them. This is the second Wi-Fi standard that is dual band. Wi-Fi 4 or 802.11n was the first time we introduced a standard that was both 2.4 and 5 gig. Wi-Fi 5 was only 5 gig. So when we got to Wi-Fi 6 and they went back to, again, doing a dual band scenario, this is awesome because we haven't had an update to 2.4 gig in 15 years, since 2009. So devices will absolutely perform better, even on 2.4 gig, than they did in the past because it's a newer technology and the way it functions is fundamentally different. So being dual band is a really good benefit to allow our devices the most seamless ability to transition between APs and areas. Additionally, they added something called OFDMA. All Wi-Fi in the past, all the way through Wi-Fi 5, was based on something called OFDM, orthogonal frequency divisional multiplexing. And this was the modulation scheme being used, and you used the entire channel width for each transmission, whether it was 20, 40, or 80 megahertz. It really didn't matter. It was when you do a transmission, you use the whole bandwidth, the whole channel width. And that really didn't make sense from an efficiency standpoint. If you're just doing a small transmission, why do I need to use the whole bandwidth and all that power? Why can't I just use a little bit of it? Well, you didn't have that ability. Now, the cellular world, on the other hand, has been using OFDMA for years, and for this exact reason. So they incorporated it into Wi-Fi 6. This means that Wi-Fi 6 devices, if they have a small amount to send, they can just choose to use a small portion of the bandwidth and just use that. So it takes less battery power, it's more efficient, better signal connection. And why use more if you don't need it? And this is also interesting because it opens us up for the first time of an access point being able to say, you know what? We have multiple devices that all need to send small amounts of data in the environment. So why don't we let all devices that can talk at the same time? Wi-Fi in the past has always been one device talks, everything else listens. With OFDMA, because each device can use a different set of subcarrier channels, we have the potential to actually have multiple conversations happening at the same time. Now, it's not going to happen very often. Most of the time, you're going to have still one device talking, the access point listening. But in high density environments like airports, stadiums, things like that, the access point can definitely promote a bunch of Wi-Fi 6 clients talking at the same time to decrease latency and increase efficiency in the environment. It's really cool. We'll see a lot more use of the single user aspect of OFDMA, but it's there as part of the standard to use if needed. Here's the one that everybody wants to know. How much faster am I going to get? Well, technically, the standard is capable of 40% faster than Wi-Fi 5. It's not a huge increase, but it's definitely an increase. Wi-Fi 5 was capable of 6.9 gig, and Wi-Fi 6 is capable of 9.6. Most of our devices, though, are only two-stream devices, and our designs are limited to 80 megahertz in really all aspects. So the highest connection rates you're really going to see are about 1.2 gig. Now, that is about 40% better than the 866 possible connections we had with Wi-Fi 5. And it does mean that our throughput, your throughput on Wi-Fi 5 was usually around 280 to 300 meg. And on Wi-Fi 6 now, a 1.2 gig connection, you'll see about 400 meg throughput. So it's definitely an increase. But keep in mind, as always, your throughput's about 1/3 of whatever your connection rate is. And our clients aren't really tapping into those high levels of speeds anyways. But for those who want it, it's there. You definitely can connect at a higher rate. But that brings us to a new reality. If our access points are capable of a 9.6 gig connection, how do we do that over a 1 gig Ethernet port on the access point? Yeah, good question, huh? Well, we can't. So you're going to start seeing on new access points, you're going to see 1 gig, 2.5 gig, 5 gig, and even 10 gig Ethernet ports on these access points to be able to support the possible connection rates that access point is capable of. And when that happens, you're using an access point with these higher Ethernet port speeds, you need to use switches that are also capable of these higher port speeds. Because if you just put a 2.5 gig capable access point on a switch port that's only 1 gig, you're not going to get full possible performance. So you definitely want to match the capabilities of your switch ports with the capabilities of your access point Ethernet ports. Additionally, these new access points, well, they can take more power to achieve the things that they're doing. So in the past, we had originally our PoE access points, and then we had some PoE plus access points. Now we're going to start seeing access points that are PoE plus plus. That means you've got to connect them to switches that are capable of producing PoE plus plus power if you want these access points to perform optimally and to their maximum potential. So keep that in mind. Your design is, it's not just which access points you use, but making sure you use the right switches and the right cabling infrastructure to support the speeds you need to to ensure that the network is as robust as it can be. One of the other cool features that we introduced with Wi-Fi 6 is something called target wait times. And this is kind of cool because, if you've got a device that's sitting in a network and it's not really broadcasting anything, it's just waiting, it's in your pocket, it's sitting on a desk. Why does it need to stay awake and continually talking to the AP saying, I'm here, let me know if you need anything, I'm here, and pinging? That doesn't make sense. So what they did was incorporate this way of saying, you know what, the access point is going to go ahead and create a schedule for all the devices here that are capable of what we call target wait times. That means that device can go to sleep and only wake up when it's supposed to. So the access point will send the schedule to all these devices, say, you wake up now and to transmit or receive, and you wake up now to transmit or receive. And that allows them to sleep for the majority of the time, which can result in up to a 67% increase in battery power. Now, I don't know about you, but if I can get more battery time out of my smartphone, that makes me super happy. So this is a really cool technology. Another really cool thing is something called SSID color. And now this doesn't mean that we're adding colors to the Wi-Fi that's going through the environment. What it actually means is we're going to add a color bit to the header of the Wi-Fi frame. And this is important for a very specific reason. Let's say you've got, multiple access points, whether they're in your house or maybe you've got a bunch of neighbors that are close together, and they're all on the same channel. When your client device goes to transmit, the first thing it has to do is see if any other device is using the channel. And if there's another access point or another client device using the channel, doesn't matter if it's in the same house or in the neighbor's house, they can hear each other. If the channel's in use, it can't transmit. So it checks. Is the channel in use? Yep. Okay, I'm going to wait. Let me check again. Nope, still got to wait. Let me check again. Nope, still in use. Let me wait. So it has to wait until no other device is using the channel, and then it'll transmit. Which, look, when you're in an MDU or other high density environment, or even in a house that has multiple access points, if they're all in the same channel, you can imagine as you get higher number of devices, you can spend a lot of time just waiting to transmit because only one device can use that frequency, that channel at the same time. So with SSID coloring, what it's doing is it's saying, let's add a color bit to the header. And when my client device associates with an access point, it knows that that's the only access point and the client devices that are sharing that same color bit that I have to be concerned with. So now when my client device goes, I'm ready to transmit, let's look at the environment. If it hears another device transmitting, but it looks at the header and realizes it's connected to a different access point, my client device, oh, I don't care about that one. That's not connected to my access point. I can go ahead and transmit. So it allows devices to spend much, much less time waiting to transmit and more time actually transmitting in high density environments. Should be really effective in reducing latency as we get more and more devices that are Wi-Fi 6 capable. Overall, you can see that each of these technologies addresses a very different aspect of how do we make Wi-Fi more efficient, how do we make the client experience more stable, and just overall improve the use of Wi-Fi and how devices use the Wi-Fi environment. It's really cool. Wi-Fi 6 is a very, very cool upgrade to the standard. Now, as we get into the products, we'll start with the Arachnus access points because, look, Arachnus has always been known as a value-priced access point that provides great performance. And the new Wi-Fi 6 versions are no different. In fact, we actually listened to the dealers saying, man, these are great, but I would like a little more out of the access point, a little more, because there's other brands that are higher performing. So when I get into the specifications for these, you're going to see we actually went back to the drawing board, and not only did we adopt Wi-Fi 6 in our new access points, we fundamentally increased the performance of these access points over previous generations in a number of ways, and I'll show you what those are. So to introduce these, we have the 520 and 820 indoor access points, and we have the Arachnus 520 outdoor access points. You can always tell where the access point is designed for use based on the last letter, I for indoor, O for outdoor. When we look at the characteristics of the 520, it's for medium coverage area. It is a 2x2 access point, and it's capable of up to 160 megahertz wide channel width. Now, we know even though it's capable, your designs are going to be limited to 80 megahertz to ensure optimal performance in the environment, but it is capable of 160, which does mean that its maximum possible connection rate is 2.4 gig. Like I said, though, most of your connection rates are going to be based on 2x2 client devices, like your iPhones and laptops that are using 2x2 cards. So you'll see 1.2 gig connection rates on an 80 megahertz wide channel. Now, this next characteristic of concurrent users is really cool. It's not how many devices can simultaneously broadcast. I know concurrent makes it sound that way, but this is how many devices is my access point kind of communicating with on a regular basis in a short period of time, meaning how many devices are currently authenticated to the access point and how many devices are trying to authenticate. Can I connect? Can I connect? And our previous generation access points were capable of about 40 conversations. The new 520 and 820 are capable of 254 concurrent conversations. That's significant increase. And we've done that by increasing the processing power and memory in the APs, just overall making the entire product more robust and more powerful. You'll see that the Ethernet port has been increased to a 2.5 gig Ethernet port because the access point is capable of 2.4 gig connection rates. And if you're simultaneously transmitting on both 2.4 and 5 gig, you could transmit at a higher data rate than 1 gig, a 1 gig port could handle. So we put 2.5 gig Ethernet port in there. It is PoE+, and as with all Arachnus products, it is OvrC enabled native in the AP. Really cool. The 820 high performance Arachnus access point increases to a 4x4 access point, which in an environment where you have a bunch of 2x2 client devices will still give you an increase in performance through something called diversity, where MIMO gives you your speed benefit and diversity gives you the more stable conversations by better error correction and sending multiple instances of that 2x2 MIMO conversation. So therefore, the client devices receive one better than the other and have a more stable connection and more consistent connection rate. The 820 was limited to an 80 megahertz chipset for a price. When we looked at going to 160 megahertz chipset on the 820, it was just going to raise the price a little higher than we wanted to be. And we wanted to keep, the value proposition that Arachnus represents. So we chose to go with an 80 megahertz chipset because your designs can't use more than an 80 megahertz channel width anyways. That means that, again, we have the same 2.4 gig maximum connection rate on 5 gig, but you'll see 2.4 did go up to 1148, even though you're not going to use a 40 megahertz chipset or 40 megahertz channel width. It's there. It meets the standard possible connection rates, the highest possible connection rate for the standard. So great performance increase. Notice the same 254 concurrent users, 2.5 gig port, and native OvrC within the 820. Definitely a performance increase. But just enough to not have to raise the price significantly. Now, the 520 outdoor AP is very cool. Not only does it match the performance of the interior 520, but it adds this new feature. If you look on the screen, a PoE out. This means that if you need to connect another device, maybe it's a PoE camera or some other PoE enabled device, and you've only got a single Ethernet cable running to that outdoor AP location, you bring your Ethernet cable into that AP, and then you can use the PoE out to another device. When doing that, though, you are going to need to connect it to a PoE++ switch. If you're just using the 520 AP, it's PoE+, it's fine. But if you're going to use the PoE out, then it's going to overall pull more power, so you're going to need to connect it to a switch that's capable of PoE++ if you plan to use that PoE out. Again, OvrC native. And if you look at the image, you see this is a really cool AP. It's designed to be wall mounted. That's a very important characteristic. Every single AP has a very specific RF pattern of where it produces RF energy. And it's extremely important that you install your APs based on how they're designed to be installed. Join us Thursday when we go through our design guidelines presentation, and we'll dive deeper into what happens when you mount an AP different than in what it was designed for. It'll be a good conversation, and hopefully it'll illuminate some of the reasons why wall-mounted AP great to use as long as you install it in the right way. And like regular APs in the house, ceiling mounted, if you just mount them on a wall, there's some considerations you have to do. And generally it involves adding 2, 3, maybe even 4 more APs. And we'll talk about that on Thursday. How do I know which of my APs I should use though? Why should I use an 820 over a 520? When do I use an outdoor AP? Well, the first question is, can you use an indoor AP outdoors? No, avoid the warranty. Well, what about an outdoor AP indoors? Nope, they're purpose-built outdoors and you cannot use them indoors. Different characteristics. But what about a 520 over an 820? Well, the 520 has been a really solid value-priced access point that works great in many applications. But what if you have a house that has a lot of hard surfaces, reflection, or you just have a bunch of client devices? So you need just a little more robust connection to ensure everybody has better connection rates, faster performance. The 820 is going to give you that increase in performance. Same locations, better performance, better ability to handle the interference of the environment. When it comes to outdoor Wi-Fi, well, this is where you got to find out what your client is looking for. Do they just need a little bit of Wi-Fi, like on the patio outside the kitchen? Oh, that kitchen AP will cover that fine. Or, no, we need dedicated coverage outside. Okay, great. Outdoor AP it is. Well, no, we actually need seamless Wi-Fi calling throughout the property. Okay, you're likely going to have to add multiple outdoor APs now and do some serious design, but you can do it. I've done 6 acres of seamless Wi-Fi calling before. Easy enough to do. Just look at your RF patterns and follow some certain design guidelines. Either way, you can see that each of these access points has specific use cases, and definitely choose the one that's going to give your client the performance they need based on how they use their devices, their network, and their lifestyle. Now, having 2 product lines is very important. Arachnus has always been our entry to mid-level line, and Snap purchased Access Networks very specifically to have a mid to high-end enterprise line of access points. All of Access Networks access points are enterprise grade. We've got 4 interior models to choose from, ranging from compact to medium to high to top coverage, along with an outdoor version. And before I get into the characteristics of each access point, I want to talk a little bit about some of the patented technologies that come with access networks that are different than you get out of just standard access points. The first of these technologies is something called beamflex. This is not transmit beamforming, which is part of the Wi-Fi standard, which doesn't work for a number of reasons. Beamflex is a patented technology that will focus the RF energy from the access point to the single client device that the access point is talking to at that moment in time. It will not only provide the benefit of a better signal and noise ratio by focusing the RF energy, kind of like if you cup your hands around your mouth, you'll focus to the person you're talking to, but it also reduces the amount of extra energy that's going in the other directions in the environment. Because if you're not the energy that's not making it to the client device you need to talk to is just wasted energy. So by focusing it in one way, you can get up to a 6 dB gain to the one client device you're talking to, and up to a 15 dB decrease in extra interference throughout the environment. Now, that's really cool. And how it works is literally you have what's called multiple adaptive antenna elements in there. And these pattern shapers are around a central antenna element. And what happens is through software, they turn on and off these pattern shapers to focus the RF energy in the one direction of the client device that they're wanting to talk to. And they do this super fast, 400 milliseconds, boom, 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 boom. So on every single packet, it reevaluates how well was the last packet received. Okay, I'm going to go left or right from where the pattern I used last time to just dial in the best pattern for that client device in that location in that moment in time. And it will ensure that your client devices have the best signal and noise ratio they can, as you're focusing the RF energy during that conversation to that client device at that moment in time. Now, the next technology is called beamflex plus, and the plus relates to horizontal and vertical polarization. Wi-Fi is a polarized transmission, so it's going in one polarity or the other. If your access point is mounted on the ceiling like it's designed to, and you're transmitting to a laptop, which has the antennas in the monitor side, it's transmitting this vertical polarized wave that's going from the access point and going along the whole antenna in that laptop monitor. Well, if you laid the laptop down, you'd be out of polarity with that wave, so you'd have very little of the energy actually making it to the antenna. Well, when your mobile device goes through the environment, it's always going in and out of orientation with that polarized transmission. So literally the access network's access points have antennas, some that are transmitting horizontal, some that are transmitting vertical. And through diversity, it allows the client device to receive both transmissions. It's always going to receive one over the other better than the other one, and then combine them back together for better error correction. So it's essentially optimizing the polarity of the signal for your mobile device as it moves through the environment. Really cool. Again, patented technology, not something you're going to find in just standard access points. So very cool. And this is just two of the technologies that are available within Access Networks access points. We also have things like SmartCast, which will prioritize Wi-Fi packets based on what they are. Like a voice Wi-Fi call packet has better priority than a web page search, things like that. Smart Mesh, which allows you to, in rare circumstances where you don't have a wire, you can add an AP via mesh. Now, we all know that you can always run a wire. There's never a time you can't. But sometimes the cost becomes so high, people don't want to. Okay, fine. We can add APs via mesh. And if you join us Thursday, I'll talk about how you can choose an AP that can give you the best mesh backhaul, because you can have a 400 meg backhaul, you can have an 800 meg backhaul based on which AP and how you're approaching it. So you can definitely adjust the performance by AP selection when it comes to mesh. Additionally, they have within the Unleashed Access Networks access points, there is a dedicated enterprise grade wireless controller running in software. So this not only allows you to push configurations to the APs, but it's actively monitoring the environment and telling and sending configuration changes to APs based on how to avoid interference and how to maximize performance in the environment from an AP perspective. Really cool. Definitely different than just a wireless deployment tool. It's a dedicated wireless controller. And that's in all of the Access Networks access points. Let's dive into now some of the characteristics between each one. The A350 is the entry-level compact coverage AP. It's a 2x2 access point, capable of 80 megahertz wide channel widths, 1.2 connection rates, or 1.2 gig connection rate, 256 concurrent users. So it's pretty close to what the Arachnus AN520 is. But then we look at the antenna patterns. This has 64 beamflex antenna patterns per band. So that's 63 more than just an omnidirectional AP that's just broadcasting out. So think about that like points on a compass. 63 points on a compass of focusing that energy is definitely going to give you more energy compared to an omnidirectional antenna. And the transmit power on this AP, about 23 dBm on both channels, a single Ethernet port. And I put those characteristics, as you're going to see as we go through the Access Networks line. Each increase in AP increases its max power and patterns, or both. The 550, again, is a 2x2 access point, but now you see it goes up to 512 concurrent users, and your max transmit power bumps up to 26 dB on 2.4 and 25 dB on 5 gig. And we added a second Ethernet port to the AP if you need to have a Ethernet out to another device at that location, things like that. So similar to a 350, but a little better power, a little better processing power, some more concurrent users, still 64 antenna patterns. When we jump up to the 650, this is where things start to get cool. We jump up to a 4x4 on 5 gig, which increases our maximum data rate to a potential 2.4 gig on 5 gig, because we also went to 160 megahertz wide channel. All right, this is pretty cool. Concurrent users is still 512, but on 5 gig, you notice we went up to 128 possible beamflex antenna patterns. We doubled the possible antenna patterns. The transmit power stayed the same on 2.4, but we went up to 28 dB now on 5 gigs. A little more power increase, we're still there. And because of the possible higher connection rates now, we jumped up to a 2.5 gig Ethernet port on the 650. The 750, this is the flagship model. This is a 4x4 on both bands. You can see it increases 2.4 up to that same max, 1148. The concurrent users jumps up to 1,024. And the really cool thing for me is now you got 4,096 antenna patterns per band. This is huge. This means it's really focusing that RF energy into that client device that it's talking to. And this helps you fight interference from reflections off of hard surfaces, or maybe you got a bunch of mirrors or fish tanks or any of these other things which are really disruptive to Wi-Fi. Having this many additional patterns to choose from ensures that the client devices are definitely going to have a better performance than they would on any other brand. So we get to the outdoor side of things, and you can see it matches right up with the indoor 550. Same characteristics, but rated for outdoor and designed to complement perfectly as you're creating a unified environment, both inside and out. When you're trying to decide which AP to use, well, obviously using the access networks and their patented technology helps you overcome interference issues and inherent issues with the project that maybe you couldn't with the Arachnus. So the Arachnus AP was great, but maybe you got a customer, we've just got these, there's some difficult surfaces in this house, or the client's really focused on its highest connection rates. Okay, so we moved to access networks. BeamFlex is going to give us that. And then you either start from the top down, I just want the best performance everywhere of the 750s, or we work from the bottom up. Either way, you focus on the characteristics of the project and how the APs can help overcome that to provide a better experience for your customer. Again, join us on Thursday, and we'll dive into this deeper when it comes to designing Wi-Fi networks properly and how to select the right access point for that. If you want to dive into the comparison guides, they are both located on our dealer portal. You can use the QR codes in the presentation. I know this presentation will be available afterwards to scan right there. You can also use the URL, snap1.co, to either one of the Arachnus networks or access networks comparison charts. They'll have all the APs side by side there. Great when you're trying to spec a job. All right. The next thing I want to talk about is something called creating efficiency. We're all here because this is our jobs. We want to make money. We want to do the best thing we can for our customers. So it's the best experience while still being profitable. And we want to do this in a lot of different ways. It's not just by creating best products in the market. We also want to do things to help you decrease installation times, configuration times, and troubleshooting. So we help decrease installation times by reducing how many times you have to walk around. What I mean by that is it's pretty easy to determine, okay, I know my tech is going to have to go from his van into the house at least once, and he's going to bring his tools and do these things. But how do you know if the guy is going back and forth, and I went to get this tool and then he's back in, and then we'll go get this product and go back in and go. It's really hard to, you can't budget for 30 trips to the truck. So we try to reduce that as much as possible so that when you're going to do the installation, you have all the parts and pieces you need at your disposal in one trip at one time. So when we look inside the boxes, not only do we have the AP, you've got the mounting bracket, the ceiling tile plate, the Arachnus Quick Start QR code for the installation guide is right in there on a card. You've got the right screws, the drywall mounting hardware, the ceiling tile mounting hardware, all of it right included, along with a male to female category jumper cable. This is great when you're using Cat 6A. We all know that for 100 meters, you got to use Cat 6A to get to 10 gig, but it's a very difficult wire. It's not very flexible. Well, this little jumper allows you to connect right up to that Cat 6A and then have a flexible jumper that goes right into the AP, super easy, decreases installation time, makes it really solid and easy to do. Additionally, we look at the Arachnus Outdoor AP. You get the mounting bracket. You get the inner foam cable inserts to keep your cable separated. You get the weep hole rubber plugs to keep moisture where it's supposed to be and not where it's not supposed to be. You get the wall mounting hardware, everything included so your tech has what they need. Now, I know this does show the pole mount in here. That was kind of designed to say, look, we don't include the pole mount, but it is there in the rare circumstance that you need it for an Arachnus AP. Just kind of lets the technician know, yep, there is something available if you're going to need it. You just have to order that one separately, unfortunately. Within the Access Networks indoor APs, you'll notice that also comes with the ceiling tile brackets. You can connect it right to that metal ceiling tile grid. Plus, the screw holes on the AP are very specifically spaced, meaning throw a single gang mud ring in, put the screws in, the AP will click right on. They're spaced perfectly for a single gang mud ring. When it gets to the outdoor APs, not only do we include all of the grommet and plastic pieces that you need to connect around your cable to make sure that you've got a weatherproof connection point. We did it in such a way that it can either be with the RJ45 already crimped on or without. You can slide it through either way. You can put it on post or pre RJ45. Additionally, you get the ground wire because every single outdoor AP should be grounded. And you get a pole mounting / wall mounting bracket kit that allows you to either mount it horizontally or vertically based on where you need to go. And if you want a different mounting scenario, there is a bracket you can order for angled mounting as well. So we've out of the box given you a big portion of what you need to do and other things if you need them. So the idea is to decrease the time it takes to do installation. To decrease configuration time, you all know that we focus heavily on OvrC. OvrC continues to be our platform tool that every single generation we add more and more features. For example, with Arachnus access points now, we've added Wi-Fi management. This allows you to adjust which frequencies you're using, configure all of your SSIDs, your channel selection, and your power settings without ever logging into the AP. You can do it all through OvrC. Right in the Wi-Fi management section, this allows you to configure everything in OvrC. It will push everything out to the access points for you. And then they even have tools where you can go into do a site survey where you can evaluate everything else transmitting in the environment so that you can set your APs to the right channel. You'll notice you can do the wireless mode for each SSID, what channel the access point's using, what bandwidth, transmit. Everything is here in OvrC without having to log in individually to each access point. Now, a lot of people know that you can do that with Arachnus, but the reality is you can still use OvrC to configure access networks as well. Web Connect will allow you to connect directly into the Unleashed wireless controller. And once you connect to the Unleashed wireless controller, you can do the same thing that you did with Wi-Fi management, but in the wireless controller, meaning you can configure the frequencies you're using, all the SSID characteristics, the channel selection, transfer power, any of those things can be configured in the wireless controller. It will push them out to the Unleashed APs. And then the benefit of wireless controller, it'll actively monitor the environment. And it will say, oh, you know what, we've got some interference. Let's tell this AP to change channel. Let's tell this AP to change. It'll actively help the APs be on the best channel and in thereby helping increase the experience for your customers actively. This is a dynamic thing done by having a dedicated wireless controller. OvrC with Wi-Fi management works great for a deployment tool with Arachnus. The step up from that with Access Networks is a full dedicated wireless controller. Different applications require different things, so we've got both product lines. But you can see we configured all of it through OvrC. OvrC also allows you to decrease your troubleshooting time, whether it's Arachnus or Access Networks. You can log in remotely, figure out the problem when the problem is happening. Many times, don't even have to roll a truck. It allows you to take care of things remotely because you have full remote access. Additionally, we work to empower the customers to self-help. Now, that may sound weird because I've been an installer. I know how much they value us being involved. But with OvrC Connect, you can allow them to do a lot of the things they want to do for themselves without having to be involved. Meaning, Junior didn't pass his midterm. So what? We're going to turn off his phone. He's not going to be able to do it. Or we're going to schedule it because we don't want him staying up late at night. Now, I don't want to have to log in and do that every single time a customer needs it. So they have the ability to do that for themselves. They can group their kids' devices, turn them on, turn them off, pause them. And they can even use content filtering to protect what their kids are watching. I wouldn't want to be liable for their kid going into a certain site. So this allows them to do it on their own, gets them to be a part of the experience and feel like they're involved in the process. So it's kind of a cool thing that OvrC Connect allows you to do with your customers. Now, if you haven't used our Snap One tech community, man, you need to go there. Everything I just talked about is all in the tech community, plus a ton of other guides and documents from troubleshooting guides to how-to videos. Everything on the products are located here in the tech community. So much so that we literally answer 10,000 questions every day. And these are things where somebody's gone to the tech community and then found the information they needed, so they didn't even have to call tech support and go through that process. Not that it's bad, but you and I both know if I can do this just quickly by going to tech community, that saves me time, saves my customer time. So I definitely recommend going to tech community when you have a question and starting there, because you'll find most of your answers there. All right, so to kind of bring this back full circle, we talked about the fact that with both Arachnus and Access Networks, we have new Wi-Fi 6 access points, both indoor and outdoor, with very specific applications for each. We also, with OvrC and OvrC Connect, have the ability to decrease our configuration times, decrease our troubleshooting times, empower our customers to be self-helping, if you want to call it that way. That's two of really the three aspects of what we provide in networking channel. We also provide something called managed services. Now, this is one of the other reasons why we picked up the Access Networks company, is managed services, has historically involved just Access Networks products. We were bringing more things out, but even right now today with the Access Networks products, what if you need more than just products? Meaning, it's one thing to be able to configure a product, but what about doing the Wi-Fi design? What about help with design? What about, man, we are so busy, I don't have time to be configuring or troubleshooting all these things. Well, managed services offers this. You've got the core systems, which are fully engineered systems. You give them a set of plans, you give them the parameters on what the customer is using, their devices, everything. The team in managed services will design for you a core network that is purpose-built to support those devices for that customer in that house. They will put the APs on the blueprints for you, give you the entire design. When it's time to order it, you tell them how you want to configure it, they'll ship it to you fully configured. They have a team that will be able to provide support for you from being able to do configuration changes, add, move. All you need to do is do some on-site documentation and work together as a team. It's great. I was Access Networks' second dealer. This made networking a huge profit category for us. What if you don't need a whole network though? You just want to do some, ARC-based, Access Networks access points that are going to their cloud-based wireless controller, which is a little more robust than the Unleashed controller. Man, they've got that. That's also in the managed services area where the APs can be configured very quickly. You've got cloud access to any of your sites. Additionally, man, what if you're just really busy and you want to order some Access Network switches or access points that are already configured, that are Unleashed? You know what? Basic Configuration Services does that. You literally log in, tell them this is how I want it configured, order it that way. They'll ship it to you pre-configured, and then you support it yourself over time. So you can either buy a full core system where the team will support it with you, or you can buy some of it, basic configuration where it's already configured, but you do the support. And you can mix and match things. Like you could order, you could install an Arachnus router, an Arachnus switch, and still have Access Networks Unleashed APs that you had ordered through basic config, so they show up plug and play. Your tech doesn't even need to configure anything. Plugs it in, they auto connect, auto join, boom, the network's up and running for your customer. Your main system programmer never had to be on site with the Wi-Fi at all. So lots of things we can do. It's a package that we're trying to continually increase over time to offer not only products, but services and support tools like OvrC and training, just everything to really give you everything you need to succeed in the networking channel. All right. I know we went through a whole bunch of stuff really quickly there, but I wanted to make sure we had some time for questions. So I'm going to open up the floor now to any questions we may have. We'll bring Bobby in to kind of see if he was able to look at any questions, see what we have.
I had some great questions here, Nathan. The first one's from Greg Herman. What are the disadvantages of mixing Access Networks and Arachnus Wi-Fi models on the same network?
Okay.
I gave him an answer, but I would love for you to kind of expand on that.
Sure. I'd be happy to. It's a really good question. You do not ever want to mix two different manufacturers in the same wireless LAN deployment. Client devices will view them as two separate networks. So even though they have the same SSID, they won't be a unified single wireless LAN. So your client devices will never roam seamlessly. They won't, eventually, sure, they'll go between the two, but it will never be a seamless roaming because the client device will view it as two separate networks. Having a unified deployment with the same manufacturer, especially with a wireless controller, will give you the best environment for your customers, client devices, and it even allows you to do things. This is where like 802.11r fast transition roaming and things like that. The only way that comes into play is by products from the same manufacturer in the same environment, the same wireless LAN, which will then help hand off between the APs by decreasing the handshake that needs to happen by sharing information among the access points. So one of the basic tenets of Wi-Fi is do not ever mix manufacturers of wireless products in the same deployment.
Great answer. I have another question from Patrick. Does Arachnus have a controller for active roaming? That's a great question.
It is a great question. So first of all, no, Arachnus does not have an active wireless controller. It's a deployment tool, used in OvrC where we push everything out. But when it comes to roaming as well, roaming is done by the client device. Anybody who puts out a controller that says it assists with roaming, the only way it can assist with roaming is by completely disrupting the normal process of how things go, which means the client device is the single device which chooses to release from one access point and go to another. We've got one manufacturer in the channel that forces that to happen by de-authenticating client devices. that will never give you a seamless roaming path of what we're looking for, especially with sensitive things like Wi-Fi calling, high bandwidth video streaming, things like that. So the best way to achieve proper roaming is to do proper wireless design. And again, we'll talk about that on Thursday. But when you start there, roaming is going to just happen because it's the client device that chooses to release one access point and go to another. And it does that based on the quality of its connection. Great question.
Awesome. And I have a question from Terrence. Is OvrC supported using ARC networks? He's looking into the future here.
Yeah, no, currently, so OvrC itself docks directly to the wireless controller. So when you're using OvrC and Unleashed, OvrC will definitely log into the wireless controller of Unleashed and give you that aspect. When you're using ARC as the wireless controller, OvrC can still monitor whether or not your access points are staying connected, but OvrC itself currently cannot log directly into another. It'd be one cloud-based controller logging into another cloud-based device. So that's not something that currently is capable of happening, but you do have that ability of still logging in remotely through ARC. But yes, you have to use two interfaces. But yeah, hopefully it answers the question.
Awesome. And then I have another question from Len. Will Arachnus Wi-Fi 6 devices work with the 700 series and this 510 series access points?
So work with and optimal are two different questions. So can you mix and match models within a certain deployment? Sure, you can, but it's definitely not going to give your client devices the best performance. Again, when your client device is roaming, some of the things that it thinks that it's evaluating is, can I roam to, is there another AP nearby that's on the same frequency that's using the same Wi-Fi standard I'm using? Okay, I'll roam to that. If you're using older APs that can't go to Wi-Fi 6, then your device roaming from a Wi-Fi 6 AP to a non-Wi-Fi 6 area isn't going to roam as seamlessly because it says, oh man, I've got to drop down to an older technology. Maybe I should stay connected to Wi-Fi 6 a little longer. So will it work? Sure, but it's not going to be the optimal performance you'd get by having all access points using the same standard. My recommendation would be, if it's a pure budget issue, you may mix and match model numbers. Maybe you're putting if you're using access networks, maybe you've got 750s in the common area and 350s or 550s in some of the ancillary areas, or if you're Arachnus, you're 820s in some of the central and drop down to 550s on the outside or 520s on the outside. So you've got same generation, but lower price point, lower models. But will they work? Sure, just not optimal.
And then I have a question from Gary. I deploy a lot of UV access points. Can I use Arachnus routers and switches and deploy a proper mesh without having to buy all new access points?
So what okay, when you're saying deploying a proper mesh, I'm questioning that that portion of the question. Can you use Arachnus routers and switches and use another manufacturer's access points? Sure, we do it all the time with, we got a ton of dealers that use Arachnus routers and switches and use Access Networks access points. So if you're using another brand of access points, you can definitely do that. When you're talking mesh, that's between AP to AP, so that's outside of the switches. So the switch and the router won't have an effect on that aspect of that, unless that particular manufacturer has something in the way that they mesh that requires them to interface with the switch. That's a particular brand that I've intentionally stayed away from my entire career because of a number of reasons. But can you use Arachnus routers with other manufacturers? The switch, yes, absolutely.
And that covers all the open questions.
Awesome. Well, I mean, we'll give everybody a couple seconds. We still have a few minutes left. Please, if you have any more questions, jump them in. If you do have any other questions that pop up in your minds later, you can always reach out to myself, nathan.holmes@snapone.com. The recording of the webinar will be around. If you want, or your company wants a deeper dive into Wi-Fi or any of those things, please feel free to reach out to me. If you want additional information on either Arachnus or Access Networks, reach out to your respective business development managers. They have a lot more information than I can go through in a short period of time. As we said earlier, remember we've got a part 2 of this presentation happening on Thursday, which will give you your best practice Wi-Fi design and how to do optimal access point selection. And don't hesitate to always go to snaponeevents.com. Here you can find links to any of the past webinars we've done, plus, a direct link to Snap One Education or in-person events, technical trainings that are happening around, plus different events that are happening within your local branch stores. Definitely, I would recommend going to snaponeevents.com regularly because there's so much information that's constantly being updated. For me, it's something I go to usually once a week just to know what's coming up and coming down the pipe so I can plan effectively, because there's a ton of great content coming down very soon.
I couldn't have said it any better myself. I mean, this guy is, selling it hardcore on the marketing angle. No, dude, the training and everything else. You guys, please, I want to see you on Thursday. So I'm going to have both these gentlemen back. Do I have you, Bobby, as promoted? Maybe we can promote him a third and a fourth time. Man. No, that's
yeah. Well, you are talking to my boss, so I will be here.
Hey, you're doing great, apparently. Anyway, guys, we'll see you this Thursday on the part 2 installation as well. And what's funny, I think that last question that we covered, that hybrid networking kind of conversation is always interesting. Where when he said proper, and Nathan, you said, what does that mean for proper? Is I hope it's working at his jobs and everything, and he wants to probably move forward in the most efficient way. And but we can cover a lot of that stuff. And those are the types of questions that I want you guys to feel comfortable in asking. You're trying to find a way around it.
Well, and I think he brought up a really good point. I mean, look, when we're looking to upgrade our clients, we want to be as frugal as we can with our clients' money while still giving them the best experience. There are going to be times where we have to tell them, look, you really want this, you need to upgrade everything. And then that involves really ripping out racks, ripping out everything, boom, because we have to start from the ground up. There are other times where you can just say, you know what, your router and switch, everything in the, your wired infrastructure is great. We're just going to upgrade your access points to get you to the new technology, the current generation where things are at. Or maybe they already have great access points, and due to you increasing the system and different things, you do need to change your switch and routers out, and that's fine. There's a lot of different approaches to take with it, and I encourage people really heavily. Like I said, one, tech community definitely answers a lot of those things, but this is a relationship. Those people who've known me in the industry for a very long time, I'm a big believer as questions become relevant when it is poignant to something you're dealing with. And so I've always tried to be very available to, when you have a question, bounce it off, try to find the information. And if we see questions regularly, we always try to create that content. I mean, Gary, you and I were talking earlier, networking is such a vast category that, the more webinars we do, the more content we get out there. It just helps and strengthens everybody's knowledge because, like I said, it becomes relevant when it's necessary.
That's funny. Yeah. Good points, guys. All right. Let's give them 5 minutes back. If there are no more questions, I'll do a plug on next week. We have Sonance coming onto the program. Again, Thursday, we will be back in action here. If there's any registration issues you guys have, always hit us up. Thank you guys so much. We're touring the country with Wi-Fi 6, so check those dates. There's still live classes going on in many, many locations. And as Nathan, you brought up that graphic, and I saw that Quattro de Mayo graphic there, which was actually last week. That's still relevant because I'm giving away all of the prizes from that whole event, meaning somebody's getting a full outdoor radiance system that's brand new. That's what we were showing off. We've got prizes from Samsung and Klipsch and all the rest of the vendors who helped me out that day. And every single store is giving away a Sonos Move. So the next week or so, I'm going to put together a video. So stay tuned with that. And we want to give you guys some free stuff. And from all of us at the training department, cannot thank you enough. I see one Q&A here. Let's see if we can't get that going for him. Not seeing an option for the Thursday class on the events page. Can I get an invite? Thank you. Scott, let me know where you might have been going into one of our, like the AllNet site. I'm not sure. Nathan, when you went to the site, was it a particular distributor site or was it just the Snap One site?
It was just a Snap One site.
Scott, regardless,
what I'm going to do right now, let me see if I can do this. If I can post, let me just see upcoming events.
What you could do is you could take that link and drop it in the chat and he'd see it there.
If you go up to the top, Scott, and you click on webinars, you will see the first two that show up are today's webinars. And then there's the one for the first two of the part twos. I'll go ahead and just copy the link address into the chat for the first one, just to be able to do that. There's Snap events. Let's see, type answer, boom, paste, send. That's for the early one for next week. But again, if you click on webinars at the top, it should open all those up. You'll see the upcoming webinars that you can register for.
Scott, if you have any further difficulty, hit me at gary.usher@snapone.com. All right, gents. Thank you guys so much. See you in a couple of days to kind of re-prep, get refreshed, and let's do another couple of rounds. Bobby, Nathan, thank you guys so much. You're the best of the best. We'll see you guys next week or in this later on this week of the program.
Thank you, Gary.
Thanks,
Appreciate
guys.
it.